Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cantina's Last Call Podcast. Yes, that monthly podcast where me and Cam have been going over all of the Star Wars movies, except for that shitty fucking Clone Wars movie. And we've been doing them in order with special guests joining us to deliver you guys a great pathway to Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker this December. I am, of course, Kyle Malone, and as always for Last Call, I am joined by Cam. What's up, buddy?
Hey, nothing much. How's you guys? Yeah, it's good to be back on and finally discussing a movie that I actually quite enjoyed watching for once. We'll get there.
Nice. And today's special guest, our third wheel, if you would have it, is LRMonline.com's very own professional film critic, Fox. What's up, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks very much. Can't wait to be here.
Good. So those of you that might not know Fox, he's the guy that liked Venom, which means I don't like him. So
that's how we're starting this off, huh? All right, setting the tone early. I like it.
Fox is in the box.
There
That's
you
right.
go. But Fox definitely is is an incredibly important part of LRMonline.com, and I don't think we've gotten verified to be a verified critic for Rotten Tomatoes yet, have we, Fox?
No,
I don't think so.
No.
So I need all of the audience members and all of the Fox fans to lobby Rotten Tomatoes and be like, look, motherfuckers, you put Fox on that shit. Otherwise, I don't know. Don't make legitimate threats.
Maybe with slightly less threats, but in
Exactly.
a kinder way. That would be very appreciative.
I'm gonna send in a message saying the Fox rocks. Would be
The Fox rocks. I like
sounds
that.
Perfect.
So everybody that's listening to this, if you're brand new to Last Call Podcast, welcome. We are doing Star Wars movies, like I said, once a month until we get to episode 9, where we're going to do a night of release. It's going to come out at like midnight Eastern time, and it's going to be a logistical hellhole, but we're going to do it just for you, the loyal listeners, and for all of you guys that have joined us through the prequel trilogy, through Solo. Welcome to the first of the good movies. We're going to be talking about Rogue One today, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the movie that I personally consider my prequel. I don't think I'll ever show my son 1, 2, and 3. Definitely not Solo. My viewing order will start with Rogue One. But let's go ahead and ask the others joining us, especially our guest, first time. What do you think about Rogue One, just in general?
I think Rogue One was an interesting experiment that ended up being very, very good. And I don't know how much you can replicate its success, although I know Star Wars would love to be able to make more of these standalone films. Rogue One was a film when it was first announced. I had to question, just like I did with Solo, whether or not we actually needed it. And I find that now it is part of the canon. I really do enjoy it. However, I will say, you said something interesting that I would like to come back to a little bit, is that you're going to start with Rogue One. And that raises an interesting question in my mind. Can you start there, or is it better knowing the story and there fills in the gaps a little easier? I find that there's not maybe as much payoff. I wonder if there was as much payoff if you watch it before watching the original trilogy. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
agree with you, actually, Fox. I mean, in terms of if you're an experienced Star Wars fan, yeah, absolutely, that would be the order to watch them in. But for someone sort of newly coming into the experience, that for me, you have to start at the start, which is A New Hope,
Mm-hmm.
and then pick up, the other stuff later.
We'll definitely touch on this a little bit more. I'm going to make a note so we can touch on viewing order at the end, because I do know I know for a lot of people, Rogue One really did change their Star Wars viewing order.
Yeah,
so
but that
I'll
would
make
be
a note of that.
Hardcore fans that grew up and have watched them all and then can experience it in any way they choose to experience it. So I'm not saying
But
that
for
shouldn't
first
be
fans,
a viewing order,
yeah.
but for first fans, I don't
We'll get
think
there.
that would be the way.
We'll get there. Cam, just in general, Rogue One?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Fox, really. It had no right to be as good as what it was, considering the sort of difficulties the production had, which were written about extensively, and the fact that, probably like Solo again, it was a story that we didn't need to be told, but it just kind of shows you, though, if you do it and it doesn't, if it fits in and seems to increase what's round about it rather than decrease from it, then it works. And that would be my view on it. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed watching it again, which I think is the first time I have said that in any of these podcasts. Every time we go, would you watch it again at the end? And I'm like, no, I really wouldn't. But yeah, I would if it was on right now again. I could sit and watch it again. There's a lot of good bits.
Definitely, I get that. I'm a lot like you guys. Look, was this film necessary? Fuck no, it wasn't necessary. And by the way, Fox, feel free to curse. But
thanks for the permission.
It was not necessary, but I'm very happy that it was made. I went and saw it opening week. I didn't get to see it opening week, and I've got a kid and babysitters and scheduling. You guys know how that is. Those of you with kids or young people in your household. But I definitely saw it, and I immediately called my buddy Brian, who was on this past week's LRM Ranks It, where we ranked slasher flicks. Friend from high school. I immediately called him and was just like, oh my fucking god, that was amazing. The movie's all fan service, and while that upsets our boss, editor-in-chief Joseph Jammer Medina,
he knows nothing.
He knows nothing.
He's practically Jon Snow.
While he is right, it is fan service, but just because it's fan service doesn't make it bad. I mean, the MCU is almost nothing but fan service, and people fucking love it. So I was a real big fan of Rogue One from the first get-go. I've seen it well over a dozen times, including for this podcast. Fox, before this podcast, when was the last time you had seen Rogue One?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before the show. I would say it's probably been a good 2 or 3 years. Because I will say it's not because, you're like, wow. And it's funny to me because you're saying you saw it 12 times, and I'm thinking, wow. But I will say, for some context, I as being responsible for reviewing a lot of films, take up the majority of my time not rewatching things. It's actually pretty rare for me to rewatch anything. So that's not a sign of my taste or distaste of the film. But to be fair, the last time I saw it wasn't for a review. It was for just out of pure enjoyment. I can remember when it came out on home video. I made a point to sit down in the theater room with a big bucket of popcorn and rewatch it, which I can tell you, I've not done for Solo. I've not done even for Logan, Deadpool 2. And those are all films I enjoy. But I have not found the time or the reason to revisit them.
Did you revisit Venom?
Go away.
I will never let you live this down. I'm joking. It's just an inside joke here at LRM Online, guys. Definitely. Cool. Cam, when was the last time you watched it before the podcast?
Yeah, I've got to say, I haven't watched it in a while either. I think it was when I got the Blu-ray at first. When did that come out? 2 years ago. So probably roughly about the same amount of time as Fox. And that was only the second time I had watched it. So I think in total, this is only the third time I've watched the movie now, which is probably says more about my disappointment with The Last Jedi than it does anything, and Solo, than it does anything else, because I've just been kind of I'm staying away from Star Wars for a little bit, so I haven't been doing a lot of Disney rewatches until this came up, obviously this scenario, so it's good to kind of go through them all again, but I think, like you, I would, as an experienced fan, start with Rogue One going forward, if I was rewatching them again.
Definitely. Fox, do you have kids?
I do. I have a 6-year-old who has dabbled into the Star Wars universe, and the order in which they watched the episodes so far was 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, then 6. He has not seen Solo, which I think I'll show it to him soon, because I think actually at his age he'll find the antics humorous. He just watched Ghostbusters 2 for the first time last night, and I mean, objectively, it's not a really great movie, but he really enjoyed watching the Statue of Liberty walk through New York. He really enjoyed the pink slime coming out of the bathtub. So I think he'll
My
like
son
Solo
likes Solo
much.
as well.
Yeah. So that'll be the next one he sees. I made it mandatory that he had to rewatch 4, 5, and 6 again before he's allowed to watch 7. So I'm dangling that over him so I can watch the trilogy.
You kind of showed it to him in a version of machete order.
That's exactly right. And I found that worked out really well. I found that the payoff in Return of the Jedi he really didn't know what was going to happen, which was really fascinating to watch. He really wasn't sure what the outcome would be. I mean, I think in his heart he knew Luke would win, but like was a little worried given Darth Vader's path, which is exactly the intention I went for.
Nice. Cam, I know you've got kids. How did they catch Rogue One and kind of what's your viewing order? What was your
my son
Star
went
Wars
to see
so
Rogue
far?
One at the cinema with me, so he has seen them all at the cinema since The
Nice.
Force Awakens, but then he's almost 12, so a little bit older. I think the first movie he saw with me of the MCU was Iron Man 2, and we have been to every MCU movie together as well since that one.
That's awesome.
But in terms of the originals, he started watching them really young, like 2-3 years old. He was jumping about with toy lightsabers, you know. Like had a YouTube video up at one point, 2-year-old Star Wars fan. He was just jumping about with a lightsaber going zoom 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 zoom, you know, like that. So
Nice.
I don't actually remember him having a specific order. I think he just banged them on, you know, and said, "Can I get a Star Wars film?" And it was, but for a while his favourite was Revenge of the Sith. So, but I think he's maturing as he gets older, for sure.
Yeah, my son was the same way. I mean, he really liked Revenge of the Sith more than I thought he would. I don't know exactly why that is, but I think he really liked the big lightsaber battle at the end. I will say, maybe like
It's
a lot
flashy,
of kids,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's funny because I think as a kid, he loved the idea of lava and volcanoes. So to watch people with lightsabers fighting on a volcano,
Yeah.
that's like all of my favorite things, you know, with a cherry on top.
I definitely get that. My son, he's 5. I have not shown him the prequels. As a matter of fact, while watching these movies for these podcasts, I have avoided letting him see them because as far as I'm concerned, it goes Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, eventually 9. Maybe.
So what age does he just turn around and say, "Dad"? you
Whenever
know,
he discovers
I
it
heard
on
there's
his own.
Yeah.
When he
I
discovers
was looking
it on
through
his
your
own.
collection because you have the Blu-ray box set.
No, I don't actually.
Do you know? I thought you had the box set.
No.
and
I have
all
I have the
DVDs.
original. I have the DVDs that have the theatrical releases on them.
Yeah.
Fox, do you have those?
I have them all digitally.
Okay.
Like,
Has anybody here seen the despecialized version?
Oh yes, actually, I will say when he watched the 4, 5, and 6, they were despecialized. That's exactly what he watched.
That is, I kind of mentioned this on LR Mornings, which is a weekday daily show from me and Jammer. Make sure you guys check that out. I mentioned how Disney is rumored to be remastering the original trilogy theatrical releases, and they're doing a lot of what the gentleman that made the despecialized order did. They're taking the original prints, cleaning them up. They're taking the special edition from 1997, cleaning it up. They're taking the Blu-rays, cleaning it up, and basically hodgepodging together theatrical releases. Cam, what do you think about that idea, just for shits and giggles?
I mean, it's fine. If I know that there is a lot of people out there that's what they want. They're not interested in the special editions, and you know, they only want to see the old ones remastered. So it'll be popular, it'll sell, and from my point of view, it would be a idiotic business decision not to do that, because they don't have the same attachment to it that Lucas does, is saying, no, this is the definitive version, so it has to be this from now on. They're like, well, people want to buy this, let's produce it.
Yeah.
Fucking, we make money off this, easy. So it's a no-brainer for me, but at the same time, I am one of those people that kind of likes some of the stuff enough in the special editions that I can ignore the small parts I didn't like. I mean, the obvious horrible one, which I'm sure we'll get to next month more, is the Han and Greedo situation, which, you know, I'd love to see a version where they kind of keep everything in except the ones I don't like, but that's so subjective to everyone. You know, my two big ones are, the one I really hated the most was the one that came in the Blu-rays that wasn't in the special editions, but when they have Vader go, no, no,
Oh yeah, that was garbage.
at the end before he picks up, I think it actually almost ruins that scene.
So
So
I know. go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So just so, but there are some things that last time we talked about, the music in Jabba's palace and how everyone hates it, and I like it because when you go back and listen to that old song, I'll do it again. It's shit. and I actually prefer the ending sort of montage as well with Williams' soundtrack as opposed to the Nup Nup song, Nup Nup, nup nup.
I guess there are things about there are things about the the 97 special edition that I did like. Fox, and this will be the last thing before we get into the movie itself. How did you take the special edition from 1997? Would you like to see those released in Blu-ray, or would you rather just a pure theatrical release?
Yeah, the 1997 version of myself was ecstatic to go see special edition in the theater. Like, I loved the new ring around the Death Star explosion. I loved the new gags with the Jawas and things like that. As I've gotten older and I saw the despecialized edition, I'll never go back to special edition. So I actually would prefer a remastered 4K version of the original prints, because I don't know, sort of to Cam's point, like, I'm not sure there's enough that I could say I like more in the special editions. Like, I agree, I think the montage is good, but if I was in charge, I would show the montage at the end of Return of the Jedi, but keep the Nuck Nuck song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's somewhere in the middle, but if I had to actually say keep throwaway, my throwaway column would be bigger than my keep column. And again, not to go off again to another IP for the second time, but having watched Ghostbusters 2 last night, I did watch the 4K version, and I was astounded at how sharp it looked. And I've seen Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 thousands of times. That's sort of one of my favorite franchises. So I know every nook and cranny of what it looks like, what it sounds like. I had on VHS, I had on DVD. Bought on Blu-ray, and I don't do that. I don't collect a lot of media over and over again, but I do it for Ghostbusters. And this was the first time where I was like, wow, that is a distinguishable difference and upgrade from the last time I saw a version.
It is quite staggering, but it's amazing. Like, the older films show up so well because film itself is such a high quality medium that if you clean it up enough. I mean, I watched Jaws the first time I got a 4K TV. I don't know why, I just decided, I looked through my Blu-ray, it's just a normal Blu-ray, so it wasn't 4K, but it upscales, obviously, and I put Jaws on, and prior to that I had just got a 720p TV, and when I watched Jaws I thought, Jesus Christ, that's fucking amazing looking.
It's beautiful,
and that's 1975, and it's, I mean, sans the dodgy shark special effects, but just the way, it looks and it's shot and everything like that,
it's gorgeous,
staggering. And, so it just shows you absolutely can clean these things up.
Yeah.
But I think the old-fashioned films that have less effects look better because sometimes they would hide the effects through the poor resolution, And I think Star Wars was one of them. I mean, famously in Empire Strikes Back, you've got the parts where you could see through the snowspeeder.
Yeah.
Because they had to make it, and in the special editions, they cleaned all that up. Now they have,
but you can still see through it.
They'd have to do that for a 4K version because you're going to see it so clearly. I think so.
That's an interesting point. Yeah,
it is. It is. Well, guys, I think it's about time. Let's discuss Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. First thing everybody noticed about this movie: no crawl, no Star Wars music, just a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, boom, planet with some rings around it, which I will say, I'm really jealous Earth doesn't have rings around it. Cam, go ahead and tell us what you thought about this introduction without a crawl.
I really liked it because it was discussed so much beforehand. What should they do? What shouldn't they do? And I was kind of the camp, no, I don't think they should have a crawl if it's not a main saga episode. So I wondered, well, how are they going to do this? And I actually really liked the way it was just like, boom, and you're straight in, more so than Solo that had its little different version of it. I much preferred the way Rogue One just banged you straight in, and how beautiful is that opening sort of sequence for a Star Wars film. At that point, that was probably, I think, the best looking a Star Wars film's ever been, more so than The Force Awakens for me. Ooh. Just the rings and the planet and the ship coming in, I thought, wow, that's so good looking. And I think it does still hold up as The Last Jedi's really good looking as well, but I think Rogue One still is up there as one of the most gorgeously shot movies out of the Star Wars franchise.
Definitely. Fox, what was your take? No crawl, no classic music, man, just boom, fucking movie.
I think it's great. I think especially because it sets the tone right away. That crescendo orchestra hit really sort of slaps you in the face and says, no, you got to pay attention. This is something a little bit different. It's a little bit grittier. It's a little bit more real. It's going to be a little bit more brutal. And I actually think that opening really helps set the table for what you're about to experience, which I think is helpful. When you go into this kind of film where everyone was a little bit confused as to what this was going to be. I appreciated that sort of thematically it gets established very quickly, and I agree that the lack of crawl and the opening shot and even a little bit of context to the narrative before you even get the title sequence is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I at first, yes, it felt weird. Not gonna lie, it felt weird sitting there in the theaters, no Star Wars intro music, no crawl. But by the end of the movie, I was like, oh, dude, that's the perfect way to do it. And as a matter of fact, I was kind of disappointed, not only in Star Wars, our solo Star Wars story in general, but I was disappointed that they listened. In my mind, I don't want to say the wrong fans, but they listened too much to the people that were like, oh, we want text at the beginning of Star Wars. I thought it was really good. I'm a huge EU fan. Cam, I know there's EU you like and there's EU you don't like. Yep. Fox, what's your opinion on the EU before we go further?
EU being the extended universe?
The old one. Yeah, the old one expanded with the books.
Universe. Before all the old novels and stuff like that?
Yeah.
The ones that aren't canon anymore.
Yeah. I'm thinking the only piece of material that I ever connected to and really appreciated, in fact, so much I read it twice, was Shadows of the Empire.
Okay,
that's my favorite.
Now,
well.
I did dabble in other things, but for some reason, I don't know if it was just a hyper sense of awareness. I felt like I was always reading fan fiction, and I never digested it and thought about it as part of the actual canon. It's sort of like, for those who read comic books, Marvel used to put out a series called What If? Yep. And it was basically this idea of, what if Tony Stark never got out of the cave, or what if whatever it may be. And so I always engaged in that material from that perspective.
Actually, just to say, they're actually making that for Disney Plus. They're going to do an animated show that's a What If, I believe. That's one.
Yeah, they are. They are actually for Marvel. Yeah. So I guess my thinking was, I don't know. I played so many of the video games and things like that, and I just always took it at face value that I wasn't playing something a part of the canon. So I was less upset about the whole striking it down and Legends, all that kind of stuff. It just never did anything for me.
It was devastating to me. Okay. I was the EU king. I was the guy that could sit there and talk about 20,000 years of Star Wars universe history. And this movie, what really appealed to me is it really felt like an EU book. I've been one of those people that, even with the prequel trilogy and definitely with the sequel trilogy, like, why do we got to be so focused on Luke Skywalker? There's so much more to the universe. So I really appreciated this one not having an opening crawl. It felt like an EU book. From the get-go.
I like that, yeah.
That's
a good
point. From
point.
the get-go, it really felt... Because the EU books, every now and then, they'll have a preface, but they don't... Like the comic books, a lot of the comics will have a crawl-esque type intro for the comics. Most of the books, your Rogue Squadron X-Wing books, your stuff by Alston, Anderson...
more a prologue, if anything, isn't it? And a prologue's not an opening crawl,
exactly.
It's the opening scene in the movie, which actually you kind of have that in this, if you think about it. It is a kind of prologue, isn't it? So and it works,
but not in text form. So I like that. We definitely get a good introduction to our main characters and the situation. That's what I feel like this opening sequence is. Mendelsohn does a great job as Krennic. Anybody disagree with that?
I love him. Brilliant.
Yeah. He's probably. I think he's my top performer in the film.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that question, damn it.
We've already established that. That's it. It's Mendelsohn.
So I think the intro for this movie is definitely a good way to introduce us to the situation. Here we've got a scientist on the lam. He gets tracked down. They're going to develop the Death Star. He's trying to protect his family. This opening sequence, from the time you see the planet with the rings to the time we skip ahead to Jen basically opening her eyes post-title card. Fox, what'd you take of this opening sequence?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great way to, again, sort of set the narrative arc. I mean, it basically tells you what the stakes are right from the beginning, because, I mean, you watch as, first of all, like going back to the previous sequence, you know, his wife is murdered. I mean, how often does that really happen in the Star Wars universe for dramatic effect? Like, sure, Han kills Greedo, but most people are chuckling at that. It doesn't feel as, and even when Obi-Wan Kenobi dies, for some reason it feels more mythical than anything else, given the way he passes. This is one of the first times you see something like, no, there's straight up murder in the beginning of a Star Wars film, and there's no coming back from it. There's no forced ghost or anything like that. So I liked how it sets narratively, you know, where you are in terms of what's important, what the rules are, and things like that.
Definitely, Cam.
Yeah, I love the opening sequence. Brilliantly shot, brilliantly acted, well written. Only one slight criticism was, as a character, you know, I didn't understand Lyra's decision to leave her child and go back to Galen. I wish they had kind of written that slightly differently, like where it was more of a, she gave herself up to sacrifice Jin or something like that. You know, I think a very small touch up in that would have been perfect. But apart from that small criticism, I really, really liked it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I thought about it the second time. I was like, wow, that was a really stupid move on your part. It didn't really dawn on me until I had to watch it this time for a more like critical eye.
Seems
but
like it seems like the kind of thing that you would write if you don't have any kids. Does that make sense? Yeah. You know, but once you've got kids, any parents like that, you wouldn't do that. You know, as a couple, you would go, one of you needs to stay with the kids. You know, boom, that's the most important thing. Because that's what you do as parents. You know, you give up your own things for your kids.
I'm one of those that, you know, when you look at bad things that can happen, and maybe some people plan for things, other people don't, but my career in life has taught me that I should plan for certain possibility events, and I'm one of those that
the zombie apocalypse.
Sure. I plan for my wife to take care of the son and me to be that guy that makes the sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciated that as well as what you're saying. Like, it made no sense for her to come back because now she's leaving her little girl to fucking fend for herself if she fucking makes it. So I do got one question, just a real quick yes or no. Fox and Cam, do you guys wish Earth had rings? Because I do.
No. Do you want the scientific reason for that?
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, I don't want the scientific reason, just aesthetics.
No, trust me.
I know the scientific reason.
You do not want it to happen. It would be bad.
No, we don't. It would be very
for
bad.
all life on the planet.
But it would look so pretty. Anyway, so the movie continues on. They kill Lyra, who is Mads Mikkelsen's Galen Erso's wife. They kill her. They go ahead and take him. Jen Erso, the main character of the film, if you will, the young girl, she gets away to go be not necessarily raised, but kind of taken care of by Saw Gerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker. I think Krennic does a great job as playing an interesting Imperial. This is the first time, really. I even think he's more interesting as an Imperial than Hux was in The Force Awakens. Cam, what do you think?
100,000,000%, you know, infinity%. I hate Hux. He's a bumbling idiot that, you know, shouts, "We will do this," and, you know, he's just like almost he's putting an Emperor voice on when he's campaigning.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to channel Hitler or something like that in the Nuremberg rallies when he's doing that thing in The Force Awakens. I just don't like his performance as Hux whatsoever. Krennic, Mendelssohn as Krennic is, you know, that's an Imperial that's just perfectly played to me. He's brilliant as a kind of senior Imperial, and he works really well off of Peter Cushing, because it's quite hard to get a performance out of him these days.
And we'll get to Cushing in a little bit too, definitely. Fox, do you like Krennic as? Do you think he's one of the most interesting Imperials that we get in all of Star Wars, or what?
100%. I mean, you even said it. Peter Cushing, I think, is the model that I would go from, and you get the sense that these two men are cut from the same Imperial cloth, which is why their interactions are so interesting. To your point, Cam, I actually found this when I was watching it again. I thought, why didn't they just put Krennic in the new trilogy? Like, why didn't you just make him Hux? Like, how much more interesting that would have been if you had a strong military personality against...
I suppose he would have been too old by
too
then,
much like the original.
And they wouldn't have been able to kill him off, and Force Awakens came out first, so maybe the Krennic character hadn't been created by then,
Oh, yeah, no, right. I'm not saying that, but I just wished I'd seen that dynamic, because I know it would have been something else that would have been mimicked from Episode 4. Like, okay, you have the military versus the Force. Yeah, but I think that would have been fine to do again, especially if the relationship had moved between 7, 8, and 9. Like, we obviously, Tarkin dies, at the end of 4, and so that you don't get to see that relationship play out any further.
Yeah. I definitely like Krennic. Like I said, I think he's the most interesting Imperial that we get out of the entire Star Wars universe, just about. Tarkin, he's got his one movie. Excuse me, but Krennic, they definitely did do a decent job developing him. We get off of this planet, we go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. We get our title card, which the music, just a couple words on the music. Me personally, I felt it was lacking. I felt they could have used more of the traditional John Williams music while making new pieces. Cam, what did you think about music in general?
I'm a score guy, and one of my favourite ever scores is the Star Wars scores.
Yep.
One of the things that really annoys me watching this film
humans
now is that score that they use, the heroic score. It's so cheesy, and see when I know we're going to get to that bit, but when the battle starts, do you know what that's really crying out for? A bit of
what's that?
You know what I mean? Because it's still Star Wars. I mean, it was like they deliberately tried not to use the Williams music, just incorporate the main parts. You didn't need to have the Force theme, you didn't really need to have the Imperial theme even, but that main heroic sort of basic Star Wars film, because it's not the Skywalker saga theme tune, it's the Star Wars theme tune, so I think you can use that in any Star Wars movie and get away with it. And actually it's like having an Indiana Jones movie and not using the Indiana Jones soundtrack, or having a Jaws movie and not using the Jaws soundtrack. You just don't do it. Snyder,
definitely.
You should have used Superman's theme for Justice League as well. There you
go. Fox, music-wise, this movie, should they have used more of the OT soundtrack, or what they did?
Yes, they should have used more of it sparingly as a treat during the sequences, not making it feel like, I think it's good for it to have its own musical identity for the majority of the film. But if you want to kick a movie into overdrive or into hyperspace, as it were, you start playing that song. Like, those are my favorite parts, actually, of the new trilogy, when they go back and they sample, the original music. I will say, like, for Last Jedi, I know that's very divisive, but I will say when I guess Rey comes back in the Millennium Falcon to create, and whoever it is, like, I guess it's somebody says, like, is it Finn who says they must really hate that ship, and they play the original "Here They Come" soundtrack, a piece of music when the Falcon escapes from the Death Star in 4. I love that. Like, that stuff that gets my hair up and it gets my heart racing, and I start nodding my head. Yeah. And I think they could have done that occasionally in here. I know why they didn't do that creatively, but I think it was the wrong choice.
I agree. But we continue on with the film. They show, look, most of you audience know that there were issues with reshoots, directors, editing. There was a lot of production issues with this film, and we're actually getting a bit of a hodgepodge film, which actually turned out better than other hodgepodge films such as Suicide Squad or Solo, a Star Wars story. But there's this scene right after what we've been discussing where we see an adult Jyn Erso, the lead character, Galen Erso's daughter, the guy that designed the Death Star. She gets some water dripped on her. She wipes off her face. They show that she's in a prison. And then they cut away from it. I actually think that was wasted time. Anybody agree? Because you could have explained, like, the next time we see her during the escape scene, I think that's enough. Does anybody think we could have cut this out?
Probably.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism, yeah.
Definitely. So the next scene that I actually enjoyed and thought we should have continued, or was glad they introduced, was Cassian Andor, Diego Luna's character. He meets a contact about information dealing with both the Death Star and a defected pilot that's going to help get them some information. That's where I would have went right after Jyn Erso's hiding as a little girl. It's our first introduction to Cassian. Fox, what'd you take of this scene and Cassian himself?
It's one of my favorite exchanges in the film because, again, I like this idea of going tonally to a new place. And historically, even though, the stormtroopers wear white, I mean, really, we always think of the rebellion as being the good people who are pure and always make good decisions and always try to do what's best and right and things like that. That's very much a leftover of the good v evil core from the Lucas films. But I like this idea, and this was even said in the promotional material going up to this, that war is messy. And the rebellion doesn't always do what's in everyone's best interest, and They don't always play by the rules, like, because you have to, and that made it a little bit more realistic and grounded. And I don't think that all franchises need to get more realistic or grounded, but Star Wars actually makes it more interesting if you tilt it a little bit in that direction. And I thought the sequence where he again flat out murders his contact was really interesting. I mean, that was one of the first time I'd seen that.
It shows the actual desperation of the rebellion, and I really, really appreciate that. Cam, thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Fox has said and yourself. Absolutely, and it did tonally set you up for what kind of film it was going to be, and it did feel realistic because that was the decision as a spy he made in that split second. Was the information was more important, the cause was more important, and that's the way those kind of characters work. It was almost like a 007-esque sort of moment.
Yeah. Which actually gives me a lot of hope for the Cassian Andor
indeed
Disney Plus show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fox, what do you think about that show?
I'll be the one who disagrees with you on that. I think that,
Well, you're fired.
Yeah, that's fair. And have a good week, everybody. So no, I mean, it's funny because we talk even just about the film Rogue One in general as it fits in this universe. We talked about how we didn't feel like it needed to be made because, for a while, and this is true of actually what happened with Solo, is there are gaps that you don't need to fill in that are more interesting when you don't know what happened. Yeah. And I think that was very true of Solo. I got to be honest with you, Cassian's a fascinating character, but he's not even in my top 3, 4, 5 that I enjoy from this film. Like, if you told me you were going to make a show about Krennic, okay, now I'm in. Like, that's something I would be far more interested in seeing. Cassian, I kind of like not knowing how he got jaded and not knowing what he did, because I think it keeps his character a little bit more interesting. I don't know that I need or want that backstory, and I also don't know that I need to expand upon this point in history in this particular battle any further. That's sort of my thinking.
I'm one of those that's been really upset with how much shit takes place between 3 and 4.
Right.
But you answered my follow-up question, which was, what would you like to see why Cassian is the way that he is, maybe in between episodes 2 and 3, the very, very earliest inklings of a rebellion, the early rebellion after the Emperor declares himself as Emperor. Cam, how do you feel about the idea of a Cassian Andor show?
I mean, I like the idea of it, but it's more that I want to spend more time in that kind of spy
the genre, not necessarily the time setting.
Secretive rebellion at that period of time, a sort of fledgling rebellion, because it's been done quite well in a little bit of the Clone Wars here and there, and things like that, where they've kind of branched out into that. that kind of genre, if you like. So I think it could work, but I don't really want to, see where Cassian Andor was born and what happened to his parents or anything like that. Nah. I kind of want him to already start at that jaded point, because he's not going to look that younger. So I only want it to be like a couple of years before the events of Rogue One, and just seeing him involved in something, a specific story that's got a, not a, hey, we've just renewed Cassian Andor for season 2, no. I know it should be one concise story across
season.
6 hours or 7 hours or something like that. Then it absolutely could work, but not to go back and just explain everything. No,
I agree, 100%. So Cassian he murders his contact to get information about the Death Star and who might have additional information about the Death Star, which is Saw Gerrera, who was a character on, was it Rebels or Clone Wars?
Well, he started in Clone Wars,
but
I think he's been on Rebels, but I don't watch Rebels, but I believe he's been on.
Yeah. So they decide... Yep, he is in the Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
Yep. Which I had somebody argue with me, shout out, I think it was Angry Customer 100, for debating with me how much of... or how much of Jedi Fallen Order is reminiscent of The Force Unleashed. I'm just saying it is a very well updated and better looking Force Unleashed. Whatever. But anyways.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually.
It's fine with that.
I didn't really... I thought the gameplay loop in that game was... Those games were rubbish. And they kind of... Especially the second one, they played hard and loose with canon. But...
It's all right though. It is. It's as long as it's a good game. Who cares? It could be fun. I was just pointing out to him that it's more Force Unleashed than it isn't. So
it's not. I was hoping for an RPG, but there you go.
Yeah. Andor goes ahead. He kills his contact, and we then go to a rescue scene. This is where I think we should have first gotten our introduction to Jyn Erso. Is the rescue scene? I like K2SO and our initial introduction to him. He kind of clotheslines her for those that are into wrestling terminology and says, hey, guess what? You're being rescued. Any complaints that the rescue... Do either one of you guys disagree that the rescue scene should have been the first introduction to adult Jyn Erso?
That would have been fine.
That would have been fine, yeah.
So they go ahead and they rescue her, and we get our introduction to the rebellion. I really loved that they brought in the prequel trilogy, Mon Mothma, because relatively enough time has passed since the actress filmed the prequel trilogy to where Rogue One happens, plus, 3 to 5 years. I would have went straight from rescue to introduction to the rebellion. Fox, how do you feel?
I mean, yeah, I don't know if I could go scene by scene and think about how I could make this, a little bit snappier, but that would have been fine. I mean, if the general question is, is there a little bit of baby fat that could have been trimmed off of Rogue One to make it a little bit tighter? The answer is yes.
Absolutely.
But I don't know that anything is so egregious that it's, what it feels like? Rogue One feels like it's the director's cut. Like, it feels like it's the longer version. It feels like it's the longer version that didn't necessarily need to be made into theaters. It's
like
not
it could have been an hour and
right.
45 minutes instead of 2 hours and 13.
Right.
Yeah. Fox. Cam, what do you think?
No, that's fair. Yeah. It does kind of drag a little bit in places. It could have done with getting tightened up a little bit here and there. Totally agree with you. Trimming the fat, as Fox puts it, is absolutely the best way to describe it. Yeah, but nothing too bad.
Now, one character that a lot of EU fans should know, and if you don't, you're not a real EU fan, is Garm Bel Iblis, or Iblis, however you want to pronounce it. Saw Gerrera is definitely that character. He is somebody that was a little bit more extreme when it came to the original Rebel Alliance with Mon Mothma, Garm, and I'm drawing a blank on the third person, but there was 3 primary parties to the original rebellion in the expanded universe. But Saw Gerrera definitely takes the extremist point of view, which is Garm Bel Iblis's point of view. I was excited about that because it's kind of like a throwback to the EU. I know you guys have your opinions on the EU, and it is what it is, but we meet Saw Gerrera. He's meeting with this defected pilot, this pilot from the Imperials, cargo pilot that says, "Hey, I've got information I want to give to Saw Gerrera because Galen Erso, Jyn Erso's father, said to," and it deals with this super powerful weapon. Let's get to the more introductions with the rebellion, and let's get with once they decide, hey, we're going to go to Jeddah. This is the rebels. Jyn Erso, Cassian Andor, and K2SO. We're going to go to Jeddah. What did you guys think of K2SO? Fox?
Yeah, I really like K2SO. I think if you put all the droids next to each other within the Star Wars universe, you get a very eclectic mix of personalities and, I would say, functionality. I do love Alan Tudyk's work here. I think he is very comedic. I think it's probably the riskiest thing they did in this movie, because I think you always have to be careful about towing the line of being too silly of a character, and so I was okay with what they did, but I think they go very, very close to being slapsticky with his dialogue, which I think would have been jarring considering all the conversations we've already had about the serious tone. It's a very fine line to walk. I think he does a decent enough job. If they had toned him down more and been a little less comedic, I think I would have been okay as well.
Okay, and Cam?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Fox has said. Again, stop that, Fox.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it was on the line, but K2SO worked for me.
I think he works great. I actually really, really enjoyed him. I think those of you that think he did too much are wrong and that he could have done more. Just saying. No, it's all right. I totally get it. Tudyk, how do you pronounce his name appropriately?
It's Tudyk.
Tudyk, okay. I apologize. Tudyk. I think he does a great job. He's definitely a much more interesting and better character than, say, L3 from Solo, A Star Wars Story. And it has nothing to do with the third wave.
I've already forgotten feminism. Who L3 was.
It has everything to do with the actual... Yeah, it has everything to do with the actual portrayal of the character. Tudyk does a great job as K2SO, and I really like it. Saw being crazy, I don't think worked. We don't get enough. Yeah, Mon Mothma mentions that he's a radical, that he's an extremist. But the whole, Bogalik will find the truth, like all that stuff, I don't know if they gave us enough from Saw Gerrera. And if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, do you really get enough of Saw to believe he's that fucking crazy? You know what I'm saying?
It's a little bit overacting from Forrest as well. With Saw, I thought it was one of the worst performances in the film, to be honest with you. It was just a little bit too over the top for me.
I 100% agree.
It's a little bit better like later on once he meets Jyn, which I know we'll get to. And he calmed down a little bit. There was kind of more there. I was feeling it, but at the early stage, he kind of just jumped out and annoyed me, I think, as a character in those first few exchanges.
Definitely. Fox?
Yeah, I'm not going to put on too much more on top of that. Saul doesn't work for me in this film. I understand what they were trying to go for, but I don't know that it was executed as well as they wished it would on paper.
He could have worked, but he didn't, the way that they did it.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. So, they bring the Bodhi, the defected Imperial pilot. Excuse me. And he's all like, I've got information for Saw. I've been sent by Galen Erso, and they treat him like crap, which doesn't really make sense. But it is what it is. And we get Saw. Nope, correction. Hold on. There's, of course, some skipping around time frames here. And we get our first, and I really wanted to talk about this, we get our first look at Grand Moff Tarkin, Governor Tarkin, originally played in A New Hope, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, by Peter Cushing. In this movie, he's all digital. I will say this, and just in, 3 or 4 words each, I think the digital stuff looked good, but was definitely obvious. Fox, what do you think about just the digital aspect?
we've seen this done in other films, and I thought, wow, it really wasn't worth it to make a character look that bad and that distracting. This character, if there's a scale, and Marvel is with their de-aging technology is the current gold standard. And Polar Express, perhaps, where they look like zombies, is the absolute other side of the spectrum. This is closer to being good, and I will say I really liked what they did with Tarkin in this film. So again, yes, exactly. So like, if this is as good as it could get, I think it was still worth it.
So Fox, Cam, I'll ask you this: if they had
he's agreeing with everything I say, might as well just call him Fox too. It's basically mimicking. It's really okay, I think, if you call him that.
Very good. Cam, if they had instead used an actual body double that looked closely and overlaid Peter Cushing's looks, would you have preferred that versus a full CGI character?
I honestly don't give a fuck.
See
if it had been a cardboard cutout with Peter Cushing would have been here, but he's dead. Sorry, guys. But with a
do you
voice
think that
actor,
the character did a good job then?
Because I think the character needed to be in that film, was played well in the film, well voiced, written. So
good.
I am happy to ignore the fact that it didn't look exactly like Peter Cushing, because it can't, and we have to accept these things, and I just accept it.
But it's pretty close.
I do not, for me, accept Princess Leia at the end, though.
Oh, we'll get that. No. Hold that thought. We'll get there.
All right. But as far as Tarkin's concerned, important part of the movie, it had to be there. They did the best they could.
Yes.
Maybe if they had unlimited budget, if it was, if this would have been a main saga film and it was going to make this many billion, they would have had time to make it a little
still
bit
made
better,
over $1 billion worldwide.
But they didn't know how it was going to go, so they couldn't spend too much money on that one effect. And I'd be happy enough even they went back over the years and fixed it up and made it look a little bit better as the technology kind of progresses as well. But I'm absolutely no concerns about it at all.
So, we get Tarkin. We all agree that he was a necessary part of this movie. We agree or disagree with the way that they should have approached the character, which is, neither here nor there. It's very good. We know everything's going to resolve around Jeddah. Jeddah is a planet similar to Tatooine. Lots of rocks, lots of sand. It's where a whole shit ton of kyber crystals are, and the Guardian of Wills, which is a reference to one of the stories that actually inspired Star Wars from George Lucas when he was much younger. The Journal of Wills. I think it's WHILLS.
Correct.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right.
Yeah, Journal of the Wills.
Yeah, Journal of the Wills. There you go. So, and it turns out, we find out later on in the movie, that kyber crystals, the same crystals that are used for focusing lightsaber energy into an actual weapon, are prominent here, and that's what they're trying to harvest. We get this whole ambush scene, and it's kind of three ways. You have Saw Gerrera and his team trying to ambush Imperials, and you have Cassian and Jyn Erso entangled in the middle of it. And here you have your first look at the type of war movie action this film will be. I absolutely loved this scene. Despite the dialogue, just the aesthetics and the physical aspects of it. Cam, break down the scene for us in your own words.
I just really enjoyed it. It was a really kind of well-directed action scene. Every character seems to get a bit of a part to play. It's one of these kind of situations where you've got rebels on one side, you've got the Imperials in the other, as you say, and they're the kind of spies getting caught between the middle of these two people. So for them, it's about protecting themselves more than anything else. It worked really well. We get a little bit kind of variation in some of the troopers and stuff like that were kind of kicking about as well. And the guns that they were using were all pretty cool as well, in terms of sort of blaster weapons and everything like that. It was a good scene, good action scene.
Fox, any positives that Cam didn't cover, or negatives?
I'll say I really enjoyed this action sequence as well, because it feels scrappy. That's the word I would use. It feels a lot more hectic and out of control than you usually see in the other ones. Obviously, even in the big battle sequence, you have stormtroopers shooting at everything and things like that. And it feels pretty well choreographed in many of the other films. This felt like chaos, which I really thought was a unique thing in the Star Wars universe.
You can almost feel all three parties, the left, the right, and the guys in the middle, right?
Right. It's to use a quote from Marvel's Avengers. I remember at the end of the film, which I just saw that again recently, Samuel Jackson is talking to the High Council, and he says something like, "Have you ever been in a firefight, Councilwoman? Did you feel an overwhelming sense of control?" And I sort of thought about that line as I watched this battle. It felt very, very appropriate.
I may or may not be able to confirm those types of feelings and situations.
Right.
But
right.
it is a cool scene, and it's one of those that really made me feel like this is an EU movie. I can remember discussing with my buddy Brian, amongst other friends, that this felt like an EU film, just from what we had seen from the trailers, and definitely continuing that conversation from having seen the movie. But the situation happens, and Jen and Cassian end up with the breakaway rebels that belong to Saw Gerrera, and say, hey, we need to talk to him. All while this is going on, Saw's been interrogating the defected pilot, Bodhi, and the Bogalik. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Bogalik will figure out the truth. Anyways, there's this creature that can definitely fuck with your brain and apparently figure out the truth, and they're going to use it on Bodhi, the defected Imperial pilot that was sent apparently directly by Galen Erso to say, hey, here's how you'll fucking blow up the Death Star. That cargo ambush was great. I love when K2 shows up. Jen shoots a different security droid, and he's like, did you know that was me? I had faith, or whatever it is she says. That was pretty cool. Eventually, we get to Saw's people collecting, if you will, capturing the rebellion ambassadors. I'm trying to think of the right word, but Cassian and Jen Erso, and they take them to go see Saw Gerrera. How did you guys, before we get there, hold on, there's something I missed. The blind monk, Chiru, played by the very famous actor Fox or Cam. Help me out. He was the Ip Man. What's his name? The actor's name?
Donnie Yen.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I loved his actions. I loved him as the blind monk, which is the word I'm going with. Fox, what did you think?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite in the film. I think he again shows a different side of the Force, and he shows a different side of the religious aspects of the Force. If you remember, that's something that we don't get a whole lot in the newer films. But if you remember back to
non-users,
right? But I mean, if you remember back to the way it was described, even in Episode 4,
ancient religion.
Vader about his. Well, my point was, ancient religion. That's exactly right. Your faith in ancient religion. So I kind of liked bringing back that aspect of it. I think he's a refreshing, different type of protagonist that we've not seen. At least I hadn't experienced in any of the films to date, and I thought he did a particularly memorable job.
Great job. Well, that happens, and we end up with Chiru and his partner that are Guardians of the Whills, which is a nice throwback to something that George Lucas created before he actually filmed Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. There was Luke Starkiller and the Journal of Wills. So we got that nice Easter egg. We get a New Hope Easter egg with the two guys at the cantina bumping into Cassian and Jen.
Ponda Baba and Dr. What is it? Dr.
Yeah, I can't remember the names.
Evazan or something like that.
I think that's about it.
Evazan, yeah.
Although I will say the whole architect angle from Robot Chicken, way better. So we end up getting everybody ends up in, all the good guys, so to speak, end up at Saw Gerrera's area. Saul recognizes Jen. They play the clip from her father. Hey, this thing is the Death Star. Here's the weakness. I built it in because I learned to lie. And then, of course, the Death Star shows up and shoots with a single reactor the city. Excuse me, I've developed the hiccups. It shoots at the city of Jeddah. the holy city is what they call it.
Yeah.
And it destroys enough, it causes everybody else to either run away or try to escape. And of course, our heroes try to escape. K2SO is in the U-Wing freighter or fighter or something. Look, I've said this in almost every single podcast that we've had, and Cam has agreed and disagreed or been somewhere in the middle. Fox, how do you feel about the fact that every single Star Wars movie that comes out has new shit? New troopers, new ships, new shit, whether or not it takes place before the OT or after.
It seems unnecessary. I mean, I understand why you do it, and it's mostly to make toys.
Business,
you want a new Lego set. You want a new version of a trooper. It's a dirt trooper. It's I mean, they make up everything now. It doesn't probably actively bother me, but again, the word I'll use that I've used a couple times is very unnecessary.
Yeah, definitely.
I think in this film, though, designs, there is quite a few differences, but I think that's part of almost the filmmaker's thing, so you get given a Star Wars film and they're like,
part of the DNA.
Okay, I want to design my own fucking shit, wait a minute, I'm not one to just use the one that fucking, the guy that designed stuff for George Lucas did in 1983. I've been drawing Star Wars ships in the back of my jotter when I was at school. I want this is the one I came up with when I was 12 and it's fucking brilliant, and so I think there has to be an element of allowing that in. What I think Rogue One does slightly less is it's got more of the aliens that you would have expected to see in the Star Wars universe present than we've noted before that happens in the sequel trilogy.
I will say that.
Kyle, obviously, that every movie seems to have a new alien species, whereas there's the ones that we saw all the time in the old trilogy, and you're like, what happened to them, and actually
they even created a new subspecies of Ithorians, the snail, hammerhead looking creatures. They even created a whole new subspecies of them in order to sell new toys, but that's whatever.
As a business school, not too bad for it, I don't think. It feels more natural, slight differences to me.
I don't know if it feels natural, but I went to school for business, and I got the whole point for Disney is to make money, and the whole point for the artists, the filmmakers, and the actors and actresses is to make art. It is neither here nor there. It's cool. It's annoying, but it's cool, but it's annoying. We go ahead and we get them being captured by Saw Gerrera. Jen meets with Saw. They see the message from her father, Galen Erso, mentions that, hey, there is a weakness in the Death Star, and you guys can take it out. The Death Star shows up from hyperspace. They use one reactor core, and they decide to blow up the holy city of Jeddah. And you get your first inkling of, maybe not the first inkling, but you get your first actual conflict between Krennic and the Imperial Authority via Grand Moff Tarkin. And you can see how both of them are absolutely after prestige, credit, and whatnot. Fox, this scene after they blow up Jeddah, and it's like, oh, it's a success. Take us through your feelings on the Imperial interaction between Tarkin and what's his name?
Krennic, yeah. I mean, again, I think it underscores how excellent of an actor you get with Ben Mendelsohn in this particular scene, because he does something that I think a lot of Star Wars movies have tried to do with their antagonists and show rage and anger and not look goofy about it. This is a fundamental problem we've talked about with Hux, also with Kylo Ren. Oftentimes people have a hard time, I don't know why, directors, actors, doing somebody who is powerful and then showing them lose control in a way that still feels in step with who they are as a person. I think you get that in spades in this scene from Mendelsohn, who the way he explodes and the way he confronts, it's anger and it's him asserting his right, but also still somewhat being respectful and understanding his point in the hierarchy. There's a lot of subtlety there, and I think that's why it makes the scene so interesting from my perspective.
Definitely. Cam, can you make it sound any better than that? I don't think so.
No, I don't think I can. No, but there's a reason why we have Fox reviewing the movies, isn't there? But absolutely. I mean, really like the interaction and it does kind of it's that image of what a dictatorship works like. It's a throwback to the old USSR or what it was like under the Third Reich or anything like that. Whereas the leader, the overall person, is quite happy to have these people fight against each other, untrusting each other, and kind of going against each other to get more power, to get more favour, because ultimately the dictator gets what they want at the end of it, and the cost doesn't really matter to them as long as they get what they want. So it's a side of things I feel was missing from The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi with the Imperials, which I think was there in the original trilogy, and it's there in Rogue One. And even to some extent slightly in Solo, but you don't really get a lot of the Empire in Solo. But when they're there, they're not kind of comically goofy, if you like. But I feel like they kind of made the First Order a little bit too much like the cliche of the Empire. We all know, we can't shoot and stuff like that. But they lent into that too much in some of the other ones. But I feel they get it perfect, and that scene is just, to me, explains what that's the one that I would use if I was describing to someone what I'm talking about. I would say, look at this scene, and then look at the scenes, and that's how you do it,
So there's a lot of stuff that happens from this point on that we can kind of consolidate. Jen and Cassian and company are going to go to Iaru, which is where the scientific team behind the Death Star is at. For those of you that haven't been following the movie, Cassian Andor has basically been told to assassinate Jen's father, Galen Erso, no matter what, regardless of whether or not he's actually turned on the Empire. And they land on Iaru. There's a crash landing. They got to find a new ship. There's signal interference and this, that, and the other. But either way, Cassian and Bodhi end up scoping out where Krennic is talking to Galen Erso and other engineers for the Death Star project. You're a terrible liar, lying this, lying that. The X-Wings from the Rebel Alliance, the X-Wings and the Y-Wings end up showing up. Just as far as the effects for X-Wings and Y-Wings, because there is a lot of practical effects in this. Fox, what'd you take from that scene?
From the actual design and implementation of the ships in the moment?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's nice connective tissue. I thought it looks good. It reminded me probably what they wanted to do in Attack of the Clones with the rainy sequence in that one. This is obviously a little bit grander in that sense. I did like the scene overall. I don't know that I don't know that the ships for me is the most interesting part of that entire sequence, except for the fact of the reinforcing the brutality and the desperate nature of the rebellion.
What is the most interesting part of that sequence?
Well, I think the most interesting part is actually Cassian's decision making as the scene unfolds before his eyes. I do believe that I believe he struggled with his decision about what to do, to be a soldier or like stop and think for a moment. I mean, that's a theme that's been played out.
I like that.
Be better in a lot of other movies to a certain degree. Everything back all the way to A Few Good Men and things like that. Where do you draw the line between following orders and saying, okay, I need to question it, because it's a very dangerous road to go down. And I think he earns that moment pretty well, considering we had the good Cassian moment in the beginning of the movie where he does murder his informant. That I think without that scene in the beginning of the movie, you would think. Right, exactly. So I will say, when I saw the film, I kind of wasn't sure what he was going to do. And the fact that I wasn't sure, I mean, considering how many of these Star Wars films there are, how many movies in general there are about the heroes in similar situations, that to me is the sign of good character narrative. So that's my thinking. So I totally took you away from what you asked me, but that's sort of what I, even on the second and third viewing, think about the most when I sort of recall that particular sequence.
Definitely. I really appreciated the aesthetics of it all. And in addition to what you're describing there, Fox, Cam, as far as the aesthetics, we get to see X-Wings in a form and fashion that we've never seen in the Star Wars universe before. Aesthetically, this bombing mission, what did you think?
Yeah, so actually one of the things I really love about Star Wars is the whole fighters, and the space fighting and the dog fights and everything like that, because as a kid that's what excited me. When I watched Star Wars, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be a Jedi, I wanted to be a fighter pilot,
Yeah.
and go in and do dog fights, and and the old arcade game, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember it or whatever, but it was literally just some lines on a screen and you do. So I
Yep,
love that
absolutely.
kind of aspect of Star Wars, and I think Rogue One, more than any film since the original trilogy, has got the space fighting right for me. So I actually really like
we'll get there.
that
We'll
whole
get there. You're a
aesthetic
little
of
bit ahead.
Well, but you were talking about the whole kind of aesthetic of the ships coming in and doing the bombing run and everything like that, and it just, it ticked my boxes. But at the same time, I do agree with folks that scene was more about Cassian's decision at that setting. He sees Jin,
Definitely.
he knows the situation, he thinks this guy isn't the level, and he makes that decision which goes against his superiors.
Definitely. So, of course, our heroes had a crash land on Iadu. You get the whole situation where Cassian was going to go snipe Galen Erso to make sure he couldn't finish the Death Star. It turns out he's already finished the Death Star. Jen tells him before he goes off on his sniper mission that, hey, I know that he's finished the production and he put in a weak point that we can take advantage of. We need to go get the plans so we can find the weak point. We get the whole thing happen on Iadu. There's a rebel strike force of X-Wings and Y-Wings, which looks fucking beautiful. Anybody not think that looks good? Fox, looks good?
Looks great.
Great.
Oh, yeah. Looks great.
And Cam looks good?
Yep.
So, so that looks great. And they managed to at least create enough havoc for Jyn Erso and company to get off planet. Her father's going to go ahead and die. There's some other casualties. It's neither here nor there. And they get back to the rebel hideout on Yavin 4. And that's where they come up with the plan. But there's this situation where the Rebel Alliance, which is different groups that are standing against the Galactic Empire, saying, hey, we'll work together. They're at this point saying, no, we won't work together. Saw Gerrera was definitely a character that played similar to Garm Bel Iblis. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. That's how I pronounced it when I was reading. He's a guy that kind of splintered from the Galactic Alliance in the EU. But you have all these others that are like, oh, we don't have enough people, or we don't have enough munitions, or if we don't stand up, we may as well as not be an alliance whatsoever. And we get that moment where Jen and certain people decide, hey, we're going to go rebel against the Empire. We're going to go try to get these plans for the Death Star because it can cause a lot of trouble. And we get our first mission to Scarif. Now, once we get on Scarif, there's a whole bunch of little stuff that happens here and there. Some of it's character development, some of it's story development. But I want to know, Cam, as far as the battle for Scarif, ground battle only, before they get their hands on the Death Star plan, what was your take on that?
It's alright. The ground battles in Star Wars aren't the parts that excite me the most, I don't think. So until the ships arrived, I was just kind of okay with it. Does that make sense? It's a great battle.
No, you're a
in Star
terrible
Wars.
person. I thought it was fucking brilliant.
People behind bunkers shooting with laser pistols, it's just kind of, it's what I expected.
Okay.
It wasn't any better than what I expected.
I
For me,
respect
it
your
lit up.
reality, but substitute my own.
When the fighters appeared, that's when it lit up for me.
Fox, what did you think of the Battle of Scarif leading up to them getting the plans?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to disagree with Cam a little bit, because I will say the thing that I really liked, that it was something new about this particular battle, and that's really what I'm looking for in these films, something I've not seen before with familiar characters or familiar tech or whatever. Taking aside from that, there's always these new stormtroopers and things like that. One of my favorite pieces about this thing was the weight and the intensity of the walkers. The fact of seeing them,
definitely
mowing down people and coming at you like giant mechanical elephant tanks, whatever you want to call them, camelbacks. That's something that those pieces of tech I always thought were cool. But again, even in Empire Strikes Back, they're so far away, they don't really feel like an immediate threat. And in Jedi, we have the AT-STs, which are smaller, and actually I thought those were creepy. Like with the fact that they were those things were chasing after you, Terminator style. So to see human interaction or humanoid interaction, however you want to take it, at ground zero with these things like literally a few yards away, that was thrilling to me and something I hadn't seen before. So that's the piece of this that I think is kind of intense, which I appreciate.
Actually, definitely. I think you've changed my mind as well, because when I think about what you said with the AT-ATs, that is probably a much cooler sequence than, for example, what they tried to do in The Last Jedi with them. For me, it felt up close and personal and everything like that with them.
Right. That's exactly right.
It was good.
I will say this, Cam and Fox, Cam knows, Fox may or may not know what my civilian job is, what I do for a daily business. I will say this movie definitely had a lot more sound tactics than a lot of other movies that deal with Warzone stuff, and I know that that's something Disney was aiming for. This movie really felt like an EU movie. If you read and enjoyed the EU, you can see where this fits in with the EU. But I really enjoyed all of this stuff on Scarif. It felt like a really great battle scene. We're gonna trick people, we're gonna set off explosives across this whole border, if you will, across multiple points and multiple docking stations, and then we're gonna try to draw people out here, there, and the other. I really enjoyed the tactical aspect of this, but I want to get to the space battle. After they go ahead and make their ground assault, it gets out to the Rebel Alliance that they are on planet and they're trying to acquire these plans that they had said existed, and we get a bunch of Mon Cal cruisers, some frigates, and a bunch of X-Wings and Y-Wings showing up. Fox, take us through your take
I was just
on
going to say, the one thing, just before we get to that point, I just wanted to mention one of the scenes I absolutely love in this is when the guy's listening and he hears what's going on and he runs through to tell Mon Mothma, and he says, there's something happening in Scarif, etc. And she says, but what about Admiral Radis? And he says, Admiral Radis has decided to fight, and she just
already
has
this.
She has this little smile on her face as it cuts away.
Finally.
Yeah, I love that. That actually gave me goosebumps because it was like,
Fox, this space battle and the take that the commanders of the forces are taking. What do you say?
So I remember, I'm going to use I like using analogies because I think it grounds everything. When we saw Phantom Menace the first time, regardless of how you feel about the film, what we all, I think, really appreciated in its own small vacuum was that finally we saw a really excellent lightsaber battle, right? We saw people, for once, the first time on screen, really seeing fencers, use acrobatics and use the Force to battle.
For the first time since Obi-Wan versus Maul.
Yeah, I mean, right, exactly. And I mean, that sequence, the Duel of Fates sequence, with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan facing off with Maul is fantastic. And I thought that's my favorite part of Phantom Menace because I finally get to see that. That's how I sort of feel about this space battle. I sort of feel like it's a lot. It feels like something I've always wanted as part of my Star Wars, for there to be wars among the stars, which it's surprisingly light on in modern years. So I really appreciated this battle for that reason, because I felt like I saw a modern version of a space battle, which is something I hadn't really seen yet in a way that I really liked. That's my take.
Definitely. Cam, were there any issues with this space battle whatsoever?
No, it's absolutely brilliant. This is what I was looking for from the prequel trilogy space battles. That's what I wanted to get, that level, and we just never got that in the prequels. The space battles for me were really, really weak in all those movies.
I agree.
And this was a proper space battle again. And of course it goes down to planet as well. It's happening all over the place. There's exciting stuff happening. I really loved the little Easter eggs we haven't, not tons of them, but just like the odd little pilot from the A New Hope guys, that were part of that battle on the Death Star, just appearing as
or
well.
how they set up the fact that you can detect people through hyperspace for Episode 8, which is Cam's favorite movie ever.
Yeah, but hey-ho. But that's not the point. It's just really cool. They're flying in and out. There's that bit where they're going through the past the shield gate and they're getting in and out of the kind of structures. And in and out as like they try and evade the TIE fighters and everything like that. Really, really good. Felt like dogfights again, where you would zoom in and you would see them getting the target lock on and everything. Just really, really exciting. And I love the aesthetic of how they made all the actors playing the pilots look that they were pilots from the 70s, with moustaches and 70s haircuts and everything.
Well,
that was actually done.
They did use actual footage and recordings from the original trilogy, specifically A New Hope, for some of the additional squadrons that are attacking Scarif. There's a lot of Easter eggs and call-outs during this space battle, which is great. I loved all of it. I do wonder a little bit about some of the technology as far as like shield generators for planets from Rogue One versus, say, Endor and the Death Star. But, look, technology is exactly what it is, and Star Wars plays with it all sorts of way. They used Rogue One to set up tracking people through hyperspace, which is something that was used in, again, Cam's favorite Star Wars movie, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Let's just point out, it's not my least favorite either. It's just the one I was most disappointed in.
Definitely. I liked the Cheeto and his partner stuff. Cheeto, when he's like, the Force is the Force is with me and I'm with the Force, and he goes to turn off or turn on the communications array. I love all that. There's a lot of great stuff in this battle on Scarif. Even once the rest of the rebellion shows up and they make it, a good chunk of them make it past the shields. What I really liked was the people that were left outside the shields, and you get Admiral Radish or Radis. Sorry if I'm Radis. And he's like, hey, get me a Hammerhead Corvette. We're going to crash a Star Destroyer into the shield, which is something that was used from Return of the Jedi, where they crashed the Executor into the shields when an A-Wing went through its shield barrier. Even though in the EU there are auxiliary bridges and shit that can make up for that. Either way, it works for this movie, but it's not before the Death Star actually fires on the planet. The Death Star fires on the planet to try to prevent them from getting the signal out to the rebels of the plans, how to destroy the Death Star. Before we get to the most famous scene in this movie, Fox, how did you take this ending? Hey, they got their stuff out, but it was in a different format.
It's excellent. I was impressed of how well it tied directly into A New Hope, and I know what you're referring to. Obviously, is the most infamous sequence, but I did like that it clicked the button where I was like, yeah, that makes sense for a lot of different reasons. So, one, in terms of the plans being on Leia's little ship, I imagine when I remember being there, like, well, I did have that question, like, well, how in the hell did she get them? Like, it doesn't make much sense to me. And I actually thought the way they backed into that was pretty brilliant. So I give them credit for being very, very meticulous about keeping the narrative something that makes sense. In terms of the actual characters perishing, I also think that's ballsy and brilliant. And I would have hated the film ending any other way. I think it's poignant, it's interesting, and it's sort of something that makes sense within the canon. You've never heard of these characters again, things like that. So I think we talk a lot about films sticking the landing. When I watched this again this time, I thought, wow, what a brilliant landing. I mean, across the board, I just can't say enough about it that I think it elevates the entire rest of the film and justifies its existence because of what you want to call the fourth act, end of third act, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I'll get to Cam in just a second. I think this is one of those movies that said, hey, we're not going to be able to explain why nobody in the OT mentions these people or why they don't exist. And they were like, fuck it, let's kill everybody off. I loved it. It was a bold move. You could have, and Disney's all about side stories and spinoffs and TV shows. You look at The Mandalorian, not Captain America, soon to be Captain America, Falcon, and Winter Soldier. There's all sorts of ways that Star Wars could continue on stories dealing with Jyn Erso or Cassian Andor. And the fact that they were willing to kill these characters off is a huge plus in my mind. In addition to that, Cam, how happy are you that Cassian and Jyn Erso did not have a romantic relationship and kiss?
Why? I don't know why I would be particularly happy about that. I feel like you're putting words in my mouth there that I'm supposed to be happy with. But it wasn't.
I'm happy.
It wasn't appropriate at that moment in time, I don't think. But I think there was a connection there that, that was developing between those two characters had they had time in a different situation. But
maybe
that wasn't the point, But
it wasn't forced.
No, there was no need for it, At that point, they knew what they had done what they'd set out to do, or done as much as they could do. So they accepted that death was on its way, And I really liked as an ending for Krennic as well. I know that in some ways it would have been great if we could have saw him again because he was so good, but for him to just be looking up and see the Death Star coming in and then firing, and just see all his work kind of come down upon him was just such a really good ending. In fact, my only little criticism was, that bit when they say something massive's exiting out of hyperspace and the next thing you see is Krennic and he's looking up and the Death Star's there. Does anybody else kind of just want to see what it would look like if the Death Star come out of hyperspace, if we actually got to see that happen? Because it's something we've never seen before in a Star Wars film. I kind of just wanted one little shot of that before we got to that point. Other than that, perfect sort of ending, if you like.
So the movie goes ahead and ends with our heroes getting the Death Star plans broadcasted to the Rebel Alliance. There's a shield problem as well as a physical problem dealing with stormtroopers attacking. K2SO, played by Alan Tudyk, does a great job. I really appreciated that. But we get what was, let's see, Rogue Squadron came out 2016, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or Rogue One, 2016 in December. That was the greatest cinematic moment in history. Darth Vader coming down the hallway until the portal scene from Avengers Endgame. Fox, go ahead and take us down your memory of that Darth Vader scene when he comes down the hallway to try to prevent them from getting away with the plans.
It's incredible. I mean, the only thing that is bad about it is that if you finish that movie and you watch them in order, and then you watch episode 4, you're like, when the hell did he get arthritis? I mean, that would basically be your thinking in A New Hope, because he's so much more wooden. But the sequence is brilliantly shot. It's brilliantly executed. It's brutal. It's harsh. It is scary. It's everything that we associated with Darth Vader. Probably when he came out, he probably felt just as scary then in 1977, 1980, things like that. But he's been modernized to bring back the terror and the evil. It's absolutely fantastic.
Very good. And Cam, what are your takes on the infamous or famous or whatever you look? It's fucking amazing. What's your take on the scene of Darth Vader in the hallway?
It's fucking amazing. What more is there to say? Just everything about it, the way it's shot. You get the breathing first, the lightsaber ignites. Such a nice, shot in the dark, and the way he's just sort of relentless forward. It felt like kind of like the Force Unleashed video game with that first level when you get to play as Vader. and just absolutely destroy everyone. You know, it kind of felt like that.
Definitely.
So yeah, absolutely brilliant.
It's all fan service, and this is one of the problems our boss, Joseph Jammer Medina, at Jam the Writer, so write him and tell him how wrong he is. It's one of the problems he has with the show. He's like, it's too much fan service. Do you guys feel that this movie was too much fan service, Fox?
No, I don't. Well, okay. See, that's the thing. Let me start over, actually. Yes, but in the most positive way. I mean, that's why you make these films, is to satisfy fans. I mean, I don't know what's the point. I mean, we basically say these films are supposed to entertain anyway. There's enough in here that's different and refreshing, but still feels like it's connected to the Star Wars universe. That's a really, really tricky balance to make, and I think it's why most people like Rogue One. They say, oh, I've never seen that before, but I still know the playground that I'm in. It's the Star Wars universe. So I don't know. Like, fan service is an odd thing to define, by my point, because, like, I mean, here's the thing: if you take that, like, really, who is really complaining that you got to see Darth Vader with a lightsaber again, like, whip up on people? Like, really, like, if that's what you're complaining, if you're complaining about that, then I don't know that you understand that. I don't know if you understand the definition of a Star Wars fan. I think you need to turn in your card. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Like, aren't we on board for this? Like, isn't that what we're signing up for? So that's my answer.
Cam?
Yeah, that's it exactly. In fact, my one criticism of the movie is, of course, the score needed to be more fan service than what we got. But it wasn't too much that it just felt like it was always in your face. Whereas some of Solo did at times, you know. No, I just thought it was a kind of right level of fan service. I mean, if I was to pick one thing, maybe the Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan, you know, you didn't necessarily need to have them walking past. That was unnecessary. But ultimately, overall, as Fox says, it felt like a Star Wars film. It felt like a part of that original trilogy. It didn't feel like somebody had made a fan fiction thing years later or something like that. It did feel like it was connected to that, and it had a lot of moments that we wanted to see as well. So, you know, definitely happy with it.
For me, it felt exactly like an EU movie. It felt more like an EU movie than Solo did, and of course it came out before Solo, but it felt like it fit. It felt like it really fit between 3 and 4. Better than Rebels or the Clone Wars felt in between 3 and 4. And I know technically Clone Wars is between 2 and 3, but there's aspects that kind of lead into episode 1. Either way, look, this movie has easily become my prequel. Last question about this movie's aesthetics and physical aspects itself. I personally had no issues with CGI young Leia. It's a quick moment. Is it the greatest looking? No, but because it's so short, I feel it looks better than Tarkin. Fox, how did you take young Leia getting the plans for the Death Star?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really fun moment, and again, I liked this idea of basically sewing together the two films. I mean, down to the recreation of the hallway. I mean, we've seen other movies do this and fail, and I never understood why. Like, you have the movie, just recreate it, just build it. And so I appreciated the level of detail, and I thought that it was a cool way to finish the movie, especially because there is a big downer, obviously, with all the heroes dying. So the fact that she ends the movie with the word hope is fabulous. Like, and then you get the fanfare. That is a fantastic way to finish this off. And again, double down on building the bridge to A New Hope film. I like that scene a whole lot. I mean, like I said, I actually don't think like, once they get down to Scarif, and like the rest of the movie, I think is pretty pitch perfect in terms of, again, sort of keeping up the realistic harsh realities of war, but then also remembering that this is Star Wars and there is some fun in the future. I think it's excellent.
So Cam, same question.
Right, so let me explain. It's not what I don't like about the last 30 seconds of this film is the fact that the blockade runner is inside the Admiral's ship and then escapes, and Vader literally watches it escapes, because it doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't
at
match
the start
the
of A New
aesthetics.
Hope, when she's like, we're on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan, and it's like, nah, you're not part of a diplomatic mission. You know, you're rebels. You were.
Well, they could have faked the manifest.
There was transmissions sent to this ship, not physically put on this ship, but sent to this ship. For me, it would have worked better if the final thing before Vader got them was they got it in the machine and they hit the button and it goes transmit, and then it cuts to the Cantina 4 and you see them picking it up and bringing it into Leia. And just for me, I think we could have just saw the back of her head at that point and just had her say hope, and they could have just get Carrie Fisher, obviously, who was alive then, sadly isn't now.
I can see some of that.
So
but
the last 30 seconds are my least favourite part of the film, because canonically it doesn't quite fit to the dialogue that we see in the very next scene, which is Vader's ship tracking that ship down. It feels more to me as if they would have had to find where that transmission was sent, you know?
Yeah.
Than just literally watched it. It feels as if Vader should have said to you, bitch, I just watched you in this shit. Don't give me any snash. You know,
there definitely are some issues, but overall for me, this is now my prequel trilogy. While I was watching episodes 1, 2, and 3, getting ready for Last Call podcast over the last few months, which you guys should all check out at the LRMonline.com YouTube page, or excuse me, the LRMonline.com Los Fanboys podcast page. I had times where my son walked into the room and was like, "What's this?" And I'm like, I don't want to tell you it's Star Wars. I want to tell you that it's shitty Star Wars. And I know that pisses off a lot of people that grew up in the 90s whose prequel trilogy is their Star Wars. And that's okay. Everybody's entitled to be right sometimes and be wrong often when it comes to Star Wars. But Rogue One, look, let's go ahead and discuss this. 100%. From here on forward, my viewing order for myself and my family is Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, potentially 9, Fox. What's your viewing order?
Yeah, I'm gonna break the question a little bit.
Go ahead.
My viewing order is thanks a lot. Actually, this is a compliment to Rogue One. My viewing order is, what do I feel like I'm in the mood for? Because something I like about Star Wars that this did is introduces a different genre and a different feeling of a Star Wars film. So when I want Star Wars and I want something kind of light and peppy, I may put in Return of the Jedi. If I want something a little bit heavier and a little bit more dramatic, I'm going to put on Rogue One. So in terms of the actual story, it's tough for me to go back in time to think, okay, if I was watching this fresh, what order would I want to put this into? It's an impossible question. So my answer to you is that, I think for me what I appreciate is when Star Wars expands its ranks by introducing new genres, introducing new feelings, introducing new settings. And that's why I'm excited about The Mandalorian. I think we're going to get sort of a Western type Firefly. So I understand it's not exactly what you're asking here. It's hard. I really have a hard time because I don't usually just sit down and I don't marathon them. I usually just think to myself, what do I feel like I haven't seen in a while, and what's the feeling I want to get? So I apologize it wasn't a direct answer to your question, but that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Barring any financial incentive to watch episode 1, do you ever see yourself watching The Phantom Menace ever again?
Yes, I do. More
and again
out
with
of
the fire.
No, but I'll tell you, out of fascination.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's an interesting. I think almost as if, not like because I think it's a good piece of, but I will say I have watched it recently because I watched it with my son for the first time, and he had such joy watching it as a 5 or 6 year old that I was kind of like, I heard this argument a lot, and I didn't really buy into it because I had no way of testing it, but like Star Wars movies weren't made for you at that point. Like they were made for a younger audience, and I was always like, well,
yeah, but that was a mistake.
Should be made for me.
Yeah, Lucas
probably
made
was. I'm not saying that's what they should have done.
The Star Wars fandom had grown up.
I agree with
that
you.
Point, and that's where your demographic was. But
so Cam, your viewing order from here on out.
I'm a little bit similar to Fox in terms that I wouldn't necessarily always sit down and marathon them. However, I tend to do with the original trilogy. So if I decide I fancy watching the Star Wars, I'm probably going to watch maybe across a couple of days, not necessarily in one sort of sitting, but I'm going to watch Star Wars Empire and Jedi because it feels like one continuous story for me. But I could put Rogue One on any time. I wouldn't have to start it with Rogue One.
Yeah,
I could watch
agree.
Rogue One after it and still get the same enjoyment out of it as a throwaway movie. I always say with Rogue One, if they had made it when Lucasfilm was still on the go, before the prequels had come out, we wouldn't have questioned it. I don't think. Do you know what I mean? We would have still had the same. Whoa! Wait a minute! Impact when the prequels came, it didn't have any of that baggage.
I have that on my list. If we hadn't seen episodes 1, 2, and 3, how would this affect differently? But let's go ahead and round out the questions, the consistent questions that we have every single Last Call podcast from the Cantina. Fox, who was the strongest actor in this movie for you?
Ben Mendelsohn as Krennic.
Okay. Any particular scene or reason?
Well, I mean, I feel like I'd be repeating myself, quite honestly.
Okay.
I mean, I think he has a lot of excellent moments across the board and shows he's the most fascinating person on screen at any time he's in a sequence.
Absolutely. And Cam?
Completely agree. Yeah, and I don't think I can pick up one specific thing. He's just, whenever he's on screen, he's magnetic, actually. Let's
make it 3 for 3. I agree, and I loved him in Ready Player One. So, and if you don't like Ready Player One,
I actually liked him in that as well.
I loved it. Weakest actor, Cam.
It's got to be Forrest Whitaker for me as Saw Gerrera. Just a little bit too much overacting for me, and as Fox kind of alluded to, the character I don't think really worked. So overall, his performance plus the character, what he was supposed to represent, the whole thing just didn't really work too well for me, so that's my choice.
And Fox, weakest actor?
Yeah, I'm going to just say ditto.
Okay. Mine was actually Felicity Jones. I felt while her character may have been important, I think she did a crappy job portraying that importance. Whether that's her fault or the writer's fault, whatever. Best scene in the movie, does anybody disagree with Vader in the hallway? Anybody?
I don't.
Cam?
Maybe the space battle. Actually,
that space battle's
for
pretty
me,
decent.
So
I'll forgive you for that one.
It's a toss-up. Just to be different, I'm going to say the space battle.
Worst scene in the movie, Fox.
The interrogation scene between Guerrera and Bodhi.
I agree, especially because the fucking Bogolic or Bogoli or whatever, it's like, oh, you'll lose your mind, but then he doesn't really lose his mind. Cam, what do you think? Worst scene in the movie?
Last 30 seconds of the movie. For me, as I said, just literally the last 30 seconds. I'm okay with everything up to that point. It felt like it just went, oh no, you went there, you shouldn't have went there, why did you do that? And it kind of just left that little tinge of sadness in me walking out instead of that tinge of happiness that maybe it did for other people. So while I totally appreciate that as an overall scene, the way it was, the dialogue was done, the way it was written, the scene that you're talking about probably is worse, but for me, I have to stick with that last 30 seconds.
I didn't mind that. My least favorite scene is the same as Fox. There's just so many little things that kind of combine to make a really crappy scene. I didn't mind a young Leia and the Hope line. I thought that was fine. Any last words on Rogue One, a Star Wars story, Cam?
It's really good, and if people have dismissed it, you should actually give it a try. If you thought, this will be rubbish, you should really try it, because it's actually a pretty decent film. And for Star Wars fans, I think hardcore Star Wars fans, it just feels like a Star Wars film, but a slightly different genre of Star Wars film. So definitely it's a big thumbs up from me.
Fox, last words, Rogue One.
Yeah, I think it holds up, and I actually think it's one of the films that does better on multiple viewings. I think knowing sort of the trajectory of these characters going through it once and knowing where they're going to end up at the end of the film makes a rewatch all the more interesting. So if you haven't seen it more than once, I would encourage you to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I can't tell you guys how much I love this movie. Yes, it's a lot of fan service, but it's actually done well. I think some people, Jammer, get disconcerted with the fan service aspect versus the
His other
actual.
thing is that he thinks that the Felicity Jones character Jin, that she just has no arc in the movie. She's a bystander to
She
everything
does.
that
It's just not
happens.
very profound. It's
And,
very simple.
You know, I can kind of get that, but it really isn't enough because it's an ensemble cast to me. You know, and Krennic's almost more of a major character for me than Jin is in it. You know, really.
So I definitely had this movie. It was in my top 5 of all Star Wars films of all time. Myself and Joseph Jammer Medina, the editor-in-chief of LRMonline.com, we did an LRM Ranks It, which you can find on YouTube and the Los Fanboys podcast channel. Did great. Cam, Fox, thank you guys so much for joining me this week. It's a great fucking movie. I think all of us are in agreement on that. There's, this, that, and the other differences. But, I mean, gun to your head, would you rather watch this or Solo? I think it's clear all of us would rather watch this.
Yep.
Fox, where can people find you at online?
Yeah, you can find me at LRM Online. I am writing reviews almost weekly. Please go read them and share your comments. I try to respond to everybody, and so I love that interaction. Find me there.
And you got a podcast, and it's not on the Los Fanboys podcast channel, but what is your podcast?
It's Geek Scholars Movie News, but it is part of the LRM Online
family.
Network.
Yes,
Definitely.
So Geek Scholars.
And if I
News.
may, yeah. Cam, Kyle, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor being on the show and discuss this with you. I really appreciate the erudite conversation and feedback. I thought it was a fantastic time. So, again, thank you for being such a gracious host and allowing me to come in and be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. Absolutely. Cam, where can people find you at online?
Yeah, you can find me at LRM underscore Cam, on Twitter, or you can get me an email at cam@lrmonline.com, and you'll find me writing stories on weekdays, and generally do chat quite a lot on them in the comments section and everything, so come in. We've got gifts in it now as well, which I asked for and got, so use them.
And you guys can find me at that Kyle Malone, as well as me and Cam back here around the 25th of July for the original trilogy. Cam, we finally made it.
We
Yay!
made it. Yes.
Check out the Last Call podcast around the 25th of July for Star Wars A New Hope. We thank you guys so much for tuning in every month. Like, share, subscribe, leave us some comments about what you think about the movie, and we will talk to you next time. May the Force be with you.